But still, I really miss Doug. And I really miss Mom. And I think about them all the time. But then I look at Alyssa, and I look at my son Josh, and I look at Jess, and I look at Lily and Henry, and now I look at Sophie, and I think to myself, you know what? They're still right here with us. Thank you all for being here. It means the world to all of them.
We went back a long ways, and Deb asked me if I'd say a few words, and I'm honored to be here. When wrestling, organized wrestling in Hampton started. That's probably when we became the closest. And from then on, I think we did a lot of things together. And I just jotted down some of the memories I had. We would road hunt. I remember as we get in the car, Doug had a 1964 Chevy. You guys probably remember this green Chevy. We called it the Chevron. We'd road hunt, and if we'd see a bird and we'd see it go into somebody's grove, and if we always knew Doug probably knew everybody, but if it was somebody from Trinity Lutheran Church, it was probably me that would go up to the house and ask if we could hunt. If it was anybody else, because Roger was the guidance counselor, Joanne was at the south side, so everybody knew the Hansens, and so Doug and we never got turned down. So we'd hunt, and they said we road hunted. We'd go up to Clear Lake. You remember the surf? We'd go drive up to surf. Head East was one of the bands up at the surf. One time we decided that we were going to ride our bikes to Cedar Falls. And you guys remember this? So we got one-speed bikes, and we're going to ride our bikes to Cedar. We didn't train, of course. And I don't know. We got as far as Austinville, and we had to call bars. We said, we need to come and pick us up. Again, we had so much fun. I said, again, some of the we were back then. Of course, drinking age was 18, and we had a party up at our north farm. My family farm is just north of here, and we had a big party our senior year, and we had a big bonfire. And I'd say most everybody here was there. And then the next year, Doug and I would say, let's have a party at our senior year, or the next year. Doug had gone on to UNI, I had gone to Iowa State. So a bunch of my buddies came, and then this crew over here, and I said, that's when I met most of these guys. The SAEs, I said he was tight with you guys, and it was just a fun group. Doug was probably, he was a tremendous athlete. He played baseball, he was a defensive back in football, but he's excelled in wrestling, and he was a heck of a wrestler, and went to state, wrestled at UNI. So again, just a great guy. We had, again, so many memories. But Doug was, everybody knows about Come and Go, the convenience store. Doug sent me a letter, and I know these guys have heard the story. He sent me a letter that he sent to Bill Krause, the Bill Krause family. So right after Bill passed away, Doug sent me this. So you can imagine Doug in his voice. So it says, Come and Go, employee number 2. In late 1975, I was 16 years old, headed home from a good day spent at Deeds Lake Beach near Hampton. School was still out, but I had completed my Seed Corps detasseling job at Northrop County. On the way home, I decided I needed to work my last couple of years of high school to start saving for college, so decided on the fly that I would stop at Krause General Corporation to see if they had any openings at the local gas station. With no appointment, I walked to the receptionist and asked if Bill Krause was available. She said she would check and asked me to have a seat. A few minutes later, she ushered me into Bill's office. We caught up on local sports. I described what I had been doing and what kind of work I was looking for, and why I was also and why. And I was also friends with Kyle and Kevin Krause. Bill told me that he was starting a new gas station concept called Come and Go, and would include stock shelves, snacks, and coolers for milk, beer, soda, etc. He said he had just hired a manager and would be staffing up from there. I said that sounded interesting. Bill said that if he brought me on board, we would start in a couple weeks by transforming the existing gas station in Hampton, located at the intersection of Highway 65 and 12th Avenue. He indicated that I would start by painting the station, adding shelving, stocking shelves, and generally getting the station ready. I said this all sounded great and that I was up for the task. Bill said, "You have the job and welcome aboard," but he did have one piece of advice. He said, "Doug, on your next job interview, you may consider wearing shoes and a shirt." When I told my parents what had happened, I think they were shocked that I had not made an appointment, but mostly in my choice on interviewing attire. Bill obviously looked past my appearance and saw some potentially conscientious kid willing to work hard. I still can't believe he hired me, especially given his propensity for dressing so well. I did paint the building, stocked the shelves, and went on to work at Come and Go through high school. I was always appreciative of the opportunity and took pride in the fact that I helped in a small way the start of the new concept. I am now a principal at publicly traded management consulting company. When I interview new people for the firm, I try to look past their small shortcomings and look for potential, drive, and most of all, hard work. Thanks again, Bill.
That's good.
So anyways, like I said, we had a lot of fun. Just a few other things. Of course, he met the love of his life. We still stayed in touch. I remember when Doug said, we're moving out west, and he goes, once we start a family, he goes, we'll be back in Iowa. So much for that. But anyway, again, we stayed in touch. We shared Christmas gifts. He'd send me a bottle of wine from California. I'd send him pheasants from Iowa. And then once the kids came, we kind of spent more money on the kids. We stayed in touch. The last time I saw Doug, well, he was in town for our 45th class reunion. And he told me, he says, I have cancer. We had breakfast. And he says, I don't want anybody to know. So, again, that would have been five years ago, probably. And that was the way Doug was. I mean, he was all, put himself, everybody ahead of himself. So, we stayed in touch. I went out for the wedding. It was a great time. I was so proud of Melissa and Chris. And just had a great time. And then I went out in 23 was the last time I saw him. It was I think February of 23, and he was he'd been suffering, but he didn't know that. I mean, it was all Doug was just. He goes, hey, remember the good times we had? He goes, we couldn't ask for a better place to live. We brought up all the memories, and that was the last time I saw him. I miss him. I think we all do.
Thanks.
Paul and Doug were going out coon hunting, I believe, which would be probably absolutely illegal. But anyway, and the night went on, and I always waited till that car drove up in the driveway, and then I was sound asleep before he probably ever got in the house. But that night, probably about 1 o'clock in the morning, we live only a block off in the Highway 3 here, and the ambulance went by, and I thought, there were only 2 people out this time of night with that ambulance going by. And thank goodness, about a half hour or hour later, that car rolled into the driveway. And as a parent, you can imagine the relief, and I went to sleep almost immediately. one more thing. The ladies, I don't know whether they're not even here right now.
Nope, there they are.
Oh, there they are. Okay, that Methodist Church ladies work at these events all on their own for nothing, you know, other than gratitude that they have done something for godly people and probably for God. So let's just give them a hand for okay.
Ray Trepp, and I grew up in Eagle Grove and now live in Urbandale, but today, of course, we're here to honor Doug, our friend and brother, the man who went driving an old Pontiac that had flames painted on it for a grease party in college to a Porsche. Well, we all met. It was quite the car, let me tell you. The flames were fantastic. We all met Doug at different times at UNI. He was on my dorm floor, and we also got to know his friendly and articulate, fun guy who was sometimes willing to do almost everything, or anything. Excuse me. I thought it would be great to be an SAE. We were in the Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity, and I joined a year before Doug did. I thought, this guy is fantastic. Love this guy. And so I think he was invited to a rush party, and he met my friend here, and Bill.
Hey everybody, I'm Bill Kuntz. I grew up in Waterloo. I live in Atlanta, Georgia now. And I met Doug in the fall of 1978 at a party in the front yard of the SAE house at UNI. And, you know, we just started talking, and I'm like, what a great guy. I mean, he's so talkative and, you know, asked me questions, and, you know, he was always selling. I mean, selling himself or whatever. But no, we were just, I was very fortunate to meet him, and I was extremely fortunate to give him his invitation to join our fraternity, and he was my first pledge son. Sorry. And then we were roommates our last 2 years of college. So from those fraternity parties to our shared love of hunting and fishing, to overnights right here in Hampton at Roger and Joanne's house. They were best hosts. Little side story, I remember one time we were in 2 cars coming from maybe a bar somewhere. The first car, I was in the first car that left, and we pulled up in front of the house, and they're like, well, I don't want to just walking into the house. Doug's gonna be here in 5 minutes. So we just stayed in the car, and we fell asleep. And it was cold. This was like February. All of a sudden we hear this knock, 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 knock. And it's Roger. He goes, come on, go inside, boys. So we'd go upstairs to you guys' room where we always slept and went to bed. But I'm very thankful for that, Roger. You never know. I might not be here today. Being in Hampton to the summer parties at Paul's Farm, those were awesome. We always had a great time, no matter what we did. So after college, Doug jumped in his MG and went to California, and I moved to Minneapolis.
We went on a lot of fishing trips, and in 1995, a friend of ours that was 38 years old died, and when that happened, obviously a tragic event, we decided that, by golly, every year we're going to go fishing every year, wherever that might be, and whoever can come. And Doug went a lot of those years, and that's why we kept in touch with all of that. I think we started in 95, so that's quite a number of years, 40 years here. And we're going this year, so if anyone want to go, so anyway, but through the slideshows that are on YouTube, if you want the link, I can give it to you. But one thing, just a couple of different stories. Doug and I used to do these videos in the afternoon. They get a little slow. Doug, of course, was still casting, but I got kind of tired of that, I guess. And so I would do little videos, and so I'd ask him questions, or we had an Uncle Dan fishing show one time. It was just this whole made-up thing, trying to pass the time. One of the videos I always think is funny is that I go, Doug was sitting there casting, and I said, well, Doug, you know, you're in pretty good shape. What do you do to keep in shape? He goes, well, Marty, what I do is I eat a lot of butter. It was like, just hit me like, whoa, I thought that was hilarious. Yeah, right. So it went on and on with that. So if you want to see those videos, they are out on YouTube. One of the last pictures that we took at Doug and I, it's in a slideshow that I had or whatever, but in 2019 was our last trip to this place we used to go called T2 Island Lodge, and we went there for 30 years almost. we were walking down the stairs, and I took pictures of everyone. I don't know why, I just was bored of this, and so I was snapping pictures. And one's with Doug, and he's got his hand on his chin, and he's just looking at me like, what are you doing? But anyway, it's memorable because now that was the last picture that we had fishing, and when we were there, and last one with Doug, and also the last one with the log because it's no longer there. But who knew that would be the last time we were all together, so.
You know, there's one thing that I think all of us know about Doug. He was a grinder. And that was one of his favorite terms, I think, because he would talk about the people that work for him. Yeah, that guy's a grinder. He works awesome. So Doug was a grinder, and he worked hard and smart to close deals with some of the biggest companies in this country. Seriously, I mean, year after year. He had such a great, successful career. And I always admired that. You know, I'm a business guy too. We talk about business a lot, especially in the fishing boats or in the car on these 9-hour drives to Canada. I mean, it meant a lot to me that I could have that time to talk with him. He was also an entrepreneur. I don't know if any of you knew this story, but early in his career, Doug and Deb moved to Portland, right? Portland, Oregon, to start a POS franchise. And, you know, around the same time, I was getting married, and of course, because of our friendship, I asked Doug to be in my wedding. You would think the answer would be yes, but he had to say no, and he felt very bad about it. But you know, to Doug, he was putting all of his efforts and money into running this business and just couldn't afford to be away from it for 5 days to come back to the Midwest. I always admired that, you know. Well, you know, his business legacy lives on in you, and he talked about you all the time. Melissa's got a big deal. Just sent me a text like, so proud of you.
We read about Doug being a grinder, Bill. You know, when we go to Canada fishing trips, the whole thing was one more cast. He was always the last guy to come in. We'd be dug in. So whoever he was fishing with always had that one last cast. Well, and he would tell us about the big fish he caught. You know, seen pictures. For whatever reason, he caught all the big fish every year. It was crazy. And hope he gives his little secret there, Doug. That'd be great. But one year, he was out late, had one more cast, one more drift, one more pass through the canal or whatever it is, and weather started coming in. There's some motor problems, and he and Mike Allender, the guys, Mike, raise your hand, spent the night really unprepared on an island in Canada. It was bad, really bad. We were frightened for them, like, where in the heck, you know, we found them the next morning, and they were, you know, fine, mentally scarred or something. They were fine, and it was quite the event. And if you want to read, we have, Mike's got the whole liturgy of the event written down, so if you want to read it, it's kind of interesting, maybe just us, but anyway. But the next year, we were all prepared. So we bought GPS units, we bought life jackets, we bought new rain gear. We had all the gear ready to roll because we didn't want to be lost in case we had a problem, right? Doug put his gear on first day on the boat.
Oh, let me interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
He had the best gear possible.
He really did.
Yeah, or I need this,
Oh,
I
yeah.
need that,
Yeah,
I need
yeah.
this. Want to get 2 of those?
Oh yeah.
Color coordinated.
His gear was we called him Bumblebee because it was yellow and black, and he had this hat that was kind of a bucket hat deal. But he was ready to go. He had his GPS unit and his walkie-talkie, and he had all his gear on. Well, he slipped on the rocks when he first had it on, fell right in the lake, and all we saw was his hat. And he goes, "Well, I guess I'm changing my stuff." I go, "Yeah, I guess so." That was the first day after the event, but it was really, really funny. Another little funny story that I thought was funny, and since I'm talented, I'm going to tell you, is that when we had cell phones, I happened to see his phone, and that little number that's by your email where it says unopened email. I go, "Doug, does that say 24,000? He goes, "What? What's wrong with that?" And what is that a big deal? "Yeah, no one has 24,000 unread emails. Have you not read those?" "No, I've read them. I've read some of them, not all of them." "And can you help me get that off?" I go, "Yeah." So somehow he had hit the wrong button. 24, he probably had it on there for a year or so. Anyway.
So now you know why he didn't get back to you.
Yeah, he never responded to anything. That's exactly right. Anyway, one little story I think is kind of precious or whatever about Doug is we had a picture that was taken down a canal, and whoever the guys were on the boat, they all had red hats on. He goes, man, I think that picture with those red hats are really cool. Well, the next year, T2 had a red hat. Who had one? Doug had a red hat. So he would wear it, and you've probably seen the red hat, maybe some pictures here. But he had the red hat, and he would keep it up at T2 because all his fishing gear he kept in this red bag up at the lodge, and then wouldn't have to take it back to California. He would just leave it at the lodge because that's where he fished. And anyway, so once the lodge closed, and we never even thought about the hat or the bag or nothing. Last year, we were in Canada, and these guys happened to get all these big bins of fishing gear and his boat bag, and he gave it to us. Well, we opened up the boat bag, opened it up, and what was in there. So with the red hat, it's going to be with us all the time. We're going to take fishing with us. It will be in dinner, at breakfast, at the bar, in the boat. But you'll remember Doug with the red hat. So it's kind of a cool thing. Is my time done?
I think so.
Okay.
Pictures one time.
Are you sure?
He's got
Well,
his.
No, I mean, this could
people
go on
of
and
that
on.
ours.
You know, Paul
Sitting
brought
there.
this up, and I really appreciate it. I admired Doug's strength so much when he was going through his long fight. Marty and I would do periodic Zoom calls with him. Started in COVID, and thankfully he kept it going every
I thought
month.
he had a cigarette.
And it was, you know, you could tell that Doug was struggling, but he never complained. Never complained. He was always positive. He would always make us laugh. You know, regardless of how he felt, he never wanted to project that onto us. And we'd talk after, you know, wow, it's hard, you know. But he never wanted us to feel sorry for him. And that was just the kind of guy Doug Hansen was.
Well, and last year at this time, Bill and John Forrest back there, and Jim Stewart and I attended Doug's memorial service in San Diego. And no surprise, it was packed with your friends from California. And each person spoke and covered Doug that we knew perfectly, just different stories, right? But still the same Doug. And as we get older, you know, we just enjoy sitting around and talking to each other and taking those precious moments and enjoy each other's company. That's very, very key. One of the things that Doug said, and Bill mentioned we did the Zoom calls, is he goes, you know, I don't always respond to all your texts and emails, but yeah, we know. But he said, I think of you guys often and consider you some of my best friends. And that was really, really cool and heartfelt, obviously. So after Doug's passing, we were trying to do something to memorialize him. And I found out that UNI has a fishing club. And the fishing club every year has a golf outing. So I said, let's get some pool or funds together and we'll give it to the fishing club, and I'm sure they've got pretty good uses for it. And they said, that'd be great. Go, do you mind if we name the tournament after Doug? And we go, not at all. So it's called the Doug Hansen Memorial Golf Tournament for the UNI Fishing Club. And it's funny because every year different people show up and they're like, who's Doug Hansen? So I've got to get up and tell them who Doug is and why we do it. So every year we're doing that. So it's the first Saturday in May at Pheasant Ridge, we have a golf outing. You guys don't know Matt Bigler yet, but he's gonna have an after party after the golf outing.
Yeah.
See, there you go. He lives on the course. I just found it out today. Anyway,
That's
that's it. I'm done.
You know, if we'd known where you lived last year, we would have come in for a beer.
Yeah, we look at it.
You know, I just wanted to say that was a great time in San Diego last year, because we got to meet a lot of Doug and Deb's friends who we've heard about for, you know, the last 30 years or more. You know, just people that Doug would talk about because he had so many friends everywhere he went. That was really nice. You know, many of our group have, you know, passed on their thoughts about Doug over the last few weeks to Marty and I, and we've tried to weave those stories in to what we're talking about today. Like most of us here, we could talk about Doug for hours. I mean, literally days, and the impact that he had on our lives. So I just want to say thank you to Deb and Alyssa, Chris, Sophie, who is so nice to meet, and Jim and Roger for giving us this opportunity to honor Doug and to talk about Doug. Doug was, as you all know, probably the shortest guy in our group. But to us, he'll always be a giant. Always be a giant. miss you, buddy.
We were co-workers for about 2 decades, professional office services. And for those of you that don't know, professional office services hired exclusively salespeople from the University of Northern Iowa. We were based in Waterloo, but our real core business were in major cities across America. We shipped them everywhere, including myself. Those letters POS meant a lot to both Doug and I. And when Debbie said, hey, we want some of his work professional background, my immediate question was, how much time do I have? And there's gonna be a lot of familiarity in some of the things I tell you, because I can tell you he was the same person that I've heard standing up here. I said, go, I get an hour, Debbie, and she never responded, but my wife encouraged me that brevity is best, and you're gonna hear some familiarity, but I'll keep it short. You know, as I listened to Jim and Paul, we met back in the 80s because Mr. Doug Hansen, I haven't can't say hi yet, and Marty, and one little Iowa story of 1 degree of separation, when I saw Marty Trepp on Debbie's text, I went, Marty Trepp, a name I hadn't heard for quite some time, was a singer in my sister's wedding. 1 degree of separation across the state. And when I listened to those three just now, I thought, we go through life with different families. Doug talked about his family on every time I talked to him. And it might have been because his dad was a high school guidance counselor, as was my father-in-law. We had so many things in common, except I was a basketball player and he was a wrestler. Other than that, we had everything in common. Doug talked about his Hampton. You know, I thought Paul Cruz was some type of god. And so we got to meet in Des Moines at one juncture, because Doug would overschedule, so he had too many things scheduled, so we had to do something together. Otherwise, his haphazard way, right, Debbie? From his college days, Doug always talked about your fishing trips. The SAE frat brothers meant everything to him. So I'm taking the next leg of saying I was his work brother. And it was an honor to be his work brother. I was so fortunate. For late 80s through the 90s, we had a trio of VPs at POS that was sales VPs. And I was the youngest, 2 years younger than Doug. Doug, he had what we called the left coast, and he always did stuff a little differently on the left coast, and it was unique to him. I had the Midwest. I was living in Des Moines. And then a guy by the name of Tom McCullough lives in Atlanta still. He had the East Coast, and the pictures are up there of all of us. Well, we always had nicknames for Doug, Tom and I did. You know, we were a band of brothers, but we were like brothers. Did you guys pick on each other a little bit? We did. In fact, the yellow hat had "or" on the front of it. We called him "or" for about 3-4 months at one point. Doug's real name for us, for Tom and I at work though, was Doe. And we would talk, Tom and I, each other, and we'd go, hey, has anybody talk to Doe lately? And you're sitting there going, why did you call him Doe? Well, if you knew Doug, he did things in a hurry. He was on the move. He was quick. And back then, this is the late 80s, we didn't have the technology. He would sign his name. Only it was D-O-U-G-H. It was Doe. There was no space. There was no capital. I could butcher the king's language. We know it, and we would tell him such. The other thing, and when you see a picture up there, and I'm wearing a green jacket, and I have a full head of hair back then, Doug was a little vertically challenged. We do know that, and the SAE guys talked about that. Well, in national meetings, we would have a professional photographer there. And of course, we'd get together, the 3 sales VPs with the VP of marketing and our senior VP that was in charge of all of us. And of course, in the picture, where did Doug stand? Right in the middle. Marty is the shortest of our group too. So this is the 90s, and facsimile machines were new technology. Wasn't that wonderful? And it went on for about 2 years. Debbie, you might recall that Mr. Tom McCullough and I would take turns being graphic designers, And we would do a group send fax of that picture, and each time Doug got a little shorter. By the time we were done with it, I think he stood just a little above the table. And every time I saw it, and I still have it, and I gladly share it with you guys sometime. Did Doug care? We had nicknames for him, or we fabricate his picture? No. Because he'd say to me, I'm no wussy, I don't care what you call me, I don't care what you do to a picture, I'm a wussy. And he wasn't. So, I want to talk about really the descriptors of Doug professionally. I'm sure you all already know this, but I want to reiterate it. First, he was relentless. Put it on you guys, and you gave him a work ethic that was bar none. I mean, nobody outworked Doug Hansen. I mean, nobody. He was passionate, and you've heard it before. Did that boy care about winning? B2B professional sales was his calling. He didn't like losing. He embodied the word dog and dogfight. This is one that, you know, I look back on, he was very creative. Very, very creative. He almost had 3 C's I have here. He was clever, crafty, and caring, but his creativity was really in the industry. POS, Professional Office Services, is a healthcare communications company at its core. But back in those days, we did print and file. Technologies that have been replaced. And in 1995, it was Mr. Doug Hansen's idea. We'd walk into clinics, and most of you guys are Iowans, so I'll say, our accounts are places like the Iowa Clinic, the Wolf Clinic, the Mason City Clinic, Cedar Valley Medical Associates. Those are all true clients of ours, only they're in Atlanta, they're in Tampa, San Diego, Portland, where he did that little distributorship for a while, I forgot about it. Doug, in 1995, would walk into an office with as many salespeople, and no one was reordering their statements, their billing statements, their patient statements, and no envelopes. Why don't you need them? Well, we just push a button and they're gone. And it was Doug Hansen that brought statement processing to POS. And so the Mason City Clinic to this day, the Iowa Clinic, the Wolf Clinic, even your Franklin County property taxes come from a plant in Waterloo, Iowa. Because Doug Hansen had the idea of, we better get in that business or we're gonna lose our business. He was very, very creative, and it makes sense he left and went into the software business because he got POS into the software business. And now half their business is selling subscriptions to people that need online bill pay, and now should be coming a text notification in the building, or a text appointment too. That was all Doug Hansen. And lastly, he was loyal. He would run through fire for his coworkers. They were not subordinates to him, they were his allies. He never talked down to any of his employees. He was my true work brother, and although it's been 20 years, we just kept in touch. And it would just be, and never responded to emails, but it'd be just an out of the blue phone call. Out of the blue phone call. And the last time I spoke to Doug was in December before his last holiday. He called me, he says, yeah, I'm hanging in there. He was as optimistic as ever.
Yep.
You wouldn't know otherwise, like everybody else has mentioned. We just talked about golf. He wanted to know when I was gonna get out to Torrey Pines so he could lift some cash out of my wallet, which he commonly did. I did play Torrey with him once when we got to Shane Zone. I had him that day. Above all though, what I really admire about Doug was his love and devotion for his 2 ladies. He always talked about you. And that's, I have 2 ladies. I have a daughter and a wife, and I've tried to replicate that. So I was very blessed, we were all very blessed, and I think that spirit we talked about is through and through. And I'm so honored that you picked me to talk about his professional career, because he was a superstar. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Alyssa. We have no idea. And today I'd like to share a couple of stories about my dad. Our family is so grateful for the love and support. And for everyone who took time off work and out of their schedules to be here today. It's been quite a year, can speak for all of us that we miss my dad every day. He would have loved to see you all here in Hampton, and I believe he's here with us. Almost every year growing up, we came back to Iowa around the 4th of July, spending time with my mom's family in Urbandale, and at least a week in Hampton. Hampton was such a special place for my dad, and now the rest of our family too. Playing with my cousins, climbing the tree in my grandparents' front yard, walking Beats Lake, golfing in the country club. The last time we were here was right before my dad started treatment, and it was so special to do all the usual stuff. But it was my husband Chris's first time in Iowa, and my dad gave us a few driving tours. The high school, he pointed out where he got some speeding tickets, and scooping the loop, of course. He didn't have a lot of requests for when he died, but he always wanted to be buried here in Hampton, and I'm so glad we were able to do that today. The baby is also very happy. One of the things I miss most about my dad is the conversations we would have, usually after a glass of wine, where we would go deep on some random topic and dream about different possibilities. He'd buy lotto tickets, and we'd build off each other on what we could do with the jackpot. One night, we took out all my old Beanie Babies, hundreds, and looked up on eBay how much they were listed for. We'd come up with random business ideas, and one of the things I really miss is sitting at my parents' island with him and my mom nearby making fun of us and laughing as we got more and more dramatic. The fall before my dad passed away, we were lucky enough to go to Hawaii as a family. My mom, dad, Chris, and me. It was a week of relaxation, wellness, no doctor's appointments, no treatment. Each day we had a big breakfast as a family, got some steps in, settled in by the quiet pool, and met for sunset and dinner. My dad's happy place, there's a couple photos of him in the slideshow, is sitting in the quiet pool with a margarita, and I'll always picture him there. That was also the last time he was able to golf, and it was so special that it was with Chris. My dad loved when we took group selfies, and there are a bunch of photos in the slideshow of all of us. We missed him the most for the little things, the subtle inside jokes, the text messages checking in, fighting over who gets to pay the bill, his love of a big country breakfast, and most of all, we miss seeing him as a grandpa to our Sophie, who was born in December. We talk about him a lot and think about him every day. He was many things: a son, a husband, a dad, a sales guy, a golfer, fisherman, a lover of technology and cars. But at the end of the day, he's also a kid from Hampton, and he carried this place with him everywhere he went.